do it correctly before. All right, now I got it working. I kind of jumped ahead of myself when I was doing Liz last week and got the live, but no, got the recording, but not the live or something anyway, because I was a little too fast. All right, thank you, people, everyone out there for staying with us for a little bit of our pre-show here while we get the technical details wrapped up and ironed out. Anyway, so welcome to Accuracy in America. I am Don Irvine. I'm joined by Brian McNicoll.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, dog-faced pony soldiers. And as of yesterday, just straight dog-face. Biden called someone a dog-face for asking him a question.
All right, so maybe we'll just add that to the list or something like that. All right, before we get into the news, I'm going to ask you to, just to give me a wrap up about your trip to Charleston?
Myrtle Beach.
Myrtle Beach.
So it was very vibrant, tourist industry down there and full. The beaches were relatively full. The restaurants, people could eat inside and so forth. The basketball. We played 4 games. We crushed the first game. The second game, it was like the Game 7 of the World Series. We were ahead, and then we weren't. And then it ended, and we weren't ahead. And then, but that put us we were still in the championship bracket, but we had to play a team that has 2 girls. They had 4 girls taller than my tallest girl, who's almost 6 feet, which is pretty good for 8th grade. Yeah. And 2 of them have verbal agreements to attend college. One of them at South Carolina, which is the #1 women's basketball team in the country right now. So these are very good players. And we fell 28 behind. And we got it to 5 in the ball one time, and we lost by 4. And I had one girl who scored 48 points in the game, and their star person had 29. So we outscored her, and she scored a lot of points on the girl who's going to South Carolina. So, they gave us a chance, so we couldn't quite come back, but it was heroic. And then we were in a consolation game, and we won it by 35 or something. So, 2 big wins, 2 narrow losses. One of them was a bad narrow loss, and one of them was, we brought the ball up the court the last time. You could tell we weren't going to win. Yeah. We had standing ovation. Both teams, all the parents stood up, and because they knew they'd seen a really good basketball game.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's not all about winning the title and everything like that. I mean, it's good character and sportsmanship and having fun. And this is one thing I want to say about this is comment about these girls that are committing, or where you've got the commitment to college, is that it just seems lately that we're seeing a lot more of that, where the college commitments are being made at far younger ages than ever before. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know where college sports is going, because we're still in that. Under COVID, it's really still unclear exactly when anything is going to start up again, for sure, with any real safety. But I don't know. I mean, do you think that these girls will even get to college? I mean, will things go that maybe there's another way for them to jump to the pros? I know the WNBA is not as developed as the NBA, but I mean, those girls are what, 14, 15, maybe 13?
They're 14, and you are making a decision, 4 years, more than 4 years out, right? And this girl, I think she's a pretty safe bet. She's 6'2", she's fast, she can shoot, she can take people off the dribble. I think what's happened is, we talked about it. We actually had a conversation about this down there. You remember because it was Montgomery County, the Jewish Jordan, right?
Right.
Tamir Goodman,
something like that.
And so he played at the Talmudical school in Baltimore, and he was doing so well that the rabbis asked him to leave that school, because they're not really in the basketball business. They have a team, but they did not like reporters descending on all their games, and it being a big deal to have a basketball star. So he went to the Seventh-day Adventist school that's there in Tacoma Park. What's it called? Tacoma Academy. And he finished there. But when he was a freshman, Gary Williams at University of Maryland offered him a full scholarship. And, he said yes. And by the time he got through with high school, it was apparent that he wasn't that level of player. So they worked out a deal, and he went to Towson. And I think he played, out his whole career at Towson, which is, that's mid-major. There's Division I. There's nothing wrong with Towson. But they worked it out amongst themselves. I think now there's so many people in the talent evaluation business, and there's so many more ways that have been established to tell who's going to be good, that I think that they make fewer mistakes, and it's a little bit easier to spot who the eighth graders are that could play in college. LSU has offered an eighth grader a scholarship to play football, to be the quarterback of the football team. So he hasn't played a game of high school yet. So, how do they know? I don't know. But, I think that part of it is there's a lot more study of these kids at younger ages. There's a lot more people out there. Like I had several, 2 or 3 media guys come up to me while I was there asking me about my girl and the people we had played against and so forth. So, you had regional media covering an 8th grade girls basketball game, which you would not, it's sports media, it's basketball media. It's not, the Charlotte Observer or whatever. Right. But, when I was in the 8th grade, nobody knew who we were. And we had players, like in football, we had players who were NFL quality. You didn't know it yet, but so I think it's everything is tracked a lot more, and there's a lot more information out there and shared.
Yeah, well, that was actually a good fill in there on the whole Goodman thing, because I had forgotten about that guy. I do remember he was big news.
It was huge news around here.
Yeah, and now I can say now I know what happened to that guy.
Yeah.
All right. So news. America has been reopening, but now it looks like we've slowed that down. We've had lots of test cases, the spikes of the tests, of positive tests in Florida, Texas, California. The media goes crazy about this. And so bars are closing in Texas. I think Gavin Newsom closed the beaches as well.
Tournament where 2 weeks later we might not have been able to play.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, I think, we've run into this kind of question mark situation. When I was talking to my son in Arizona yesterday, his gym has closed. He'd been open for a few weeks, and then bam, it's because of the rising positive test rates, they closed the gym. Now, there's no evidence that anybody has been sickened, in the gym. It's not like that Planet Fitness gym in Morgantown, West Virginia. They put 200 of the patrons on quarantine because they had one person apparently tested positive, and they narrowed it down to a 6-hour span and said, these people, you have to quarantine now for 14 days before you can come back, and things like that. So it's in the back of my mind when I go to the gym in the morning. I'm thinking like, well, the odds of this, I think, are fairly slim because I never see more than about 12 people in the gym. But, what's going on out here?
Well, the goal of this when they shut down in March was to not have all the cases occur at one time, right? There was always a recognition that when we reopened, then there would be an initial increase in cases, right? We've all been trapped in our homes. We're no longer trapped in our homes. Okay, but the plan was to get people, if you're going to get it now in the summer where the virus has weakened, it's passed from people, person to person, and it's not as strong as it was, and the heat hurts the virus and so forth. Doesn't kill it, I guess, but it does hurt it. So, it is not the end of the world that the case numbers are going up. If you look at it like in Arizona, as you said, case numbers are going up, hospitalization is going down. There are more hospital beds. In Houston, the Democrats made a big deal out of, in Houston, hospitals neared capacity. But hospitals are near capacity this time of year in Houston every year. It's 90 they're over 90% this time of year every year. And what happened is, and there was someone who who operates a bunch of ERs down there. And there's another guy who's told me this personally, who runs runs a business that manages emergency rooms down there, who said, they let the people who've been waiting for surgeries come get their surgeries, right? There's like, I've been waiting to get my knee done, right? And once they shut down, it's like, they're not going to fix my knee, right? So all those, and a lot of people, it's a lot more serious than a knee. It's, cancer, stuff like that. So, now they finally said, okay, all you people who want to come in and get your medical care. Okay, well, the hospital's bustling, so if you add a few more COVID cases, then you are, threatening that you are stretching the hospital. Now, the hospitals, the governor, the lieutenant governor, all said that there was plenty of capacity, and that they had designed surge capacity into the system when they let up on restrictions, because in case something like this happened. So Texas was never caught unprepared, and there's no swarm of serious cases in Texas, above the averages everyone else is seeing. So what you're having is, yes, we have a lot of people testing positive, but we are testing 400,000 people a day or something. So, but most of those people, almost all of those people, are not sick. So the idea of preventing them from catching this, may not really be the strategy right now. It may be just roll the dice, because almost no one who's going to catch it now is going to be seriously sick from it.
Right. And I mean, this is one of the things is that understandably, I mean, death rates will lag behind. I mean, it's pretty rare that you're going to get it and then you'll die right away. Usually it's a lingering kind of a thing. But the death rates really haven't been spiking like this at all, right? So I mean, I think health officials, I understand the caution and things like that, but they've got to me, they have to weigh this against the damage to the economy. I mean, if you opened up a bar and then you got to close it back down again, and then you're not sure exactly how long you got to close it back down again. I don't know how these businesses are going to survive long term. In Virginia, you have Governor Northam, I think, is ready to go to phase 3, but I think he's dialed some of the things back a little bit, right?
Yeah, just a few though. I think we're almost all. I mean, we went into phase 3 today here in Virginia. Yeah, so I mean, that's what I'm saying is this is the time to I think it's and I think the people who say that this is political, at first I thought it's not really political, but now I'm starting to think that this like sudden new caution, it comes at a point where what would be happening otherwise? Trump would be out doing rallies, and Biden would be hiding in his basement, right? And so, they know that like these polls that you're seeing where Biden's 15 ahead, Democrats know that's not true. We all know that's not true. So they're saying, the longer they can keep Trump pinned down, and now Biden is saying, he's not going to campaign at all. He's going to sit in his basement all the way to November, right? Out of fear of this thing, this is about keeping Trump from doing what he does best at this point. I really, it's becoming more and more apparent that, the warnings and the way this is all being cast is political, and it's not epidemiological.
All right. So you just mentioned warnings. Dr. Fauci issued a warning that we could have 100,000 cases a day. I mean, what do you think about? I don't know where those numbers are coming from, but once again, even if the numbers spike up, they're still just positive test, cases and numbers, and it's not necessarily hospitalizations. Doesn't necessarily lead to deaths. So I think, there is a media fascination or just this incredible concentration on these big top line numbers, and I do think it goes to your point about, the politicization of all of this, is that when they can hype that, they can then, they can pound away more at Trump and try to keep him more in the bunker kind of mentality of that. You can't go out because it's too dangerous. You can't do all these things. I mean, there was something I saw a report that I don't even know who did the survey because I didn't look beyond the headline. Like 2/3 of Republicans think that the RNC's decision to hold a convention, in Jacksonville is wrong. I mean, I'm not sure where that came from. I didn't look behind it, like I said, but I don't really know that that's really true.
What do you mean wrong? What's wrong about it?
Well, wrong in certain terms is too dangerous.
My guess is the convention will be full of highly motivated Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jackson
Trump and get him reelected.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jacksonville has said that they want people to wear masks. But I think they're still not saying, as far as I know, anything that says don't come here. We want you to do these limitations. I think they will if they keep their mask edict in effect. I mean, I think that the Trump people will still show up to the convention and they'll wear the mask. They won't necessarily like it, but they want to be there. I know several people from Maryland who are delegates, and they have every intention of going to Florida, to be part of this whole event. So, it's going to be hard to stop them.
Right. And I think that, especially after the protests, all these people poured out into the street. And, down in Houston, they're saying that's part of their problem is that, there were all these people in close quarters and there was a big spread. Okay. So why did your cases go up? Well, part of it is protests. Okay. Doesn't say you shouldn't protest because those people are not really sick. Most of them are not sick. They have COVID, but they are not sick. So, good for them. Go protest, go say whatever you have to say. But like the idea that now everyone else has to go back inside. Now that they've gotten their say, we all go back inside. No, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think there's, I think we're getting close, and we talked about this before, where you have people who have, there's widespread disregard of what the public officials are ordering you to do. And that's at a level that I don't ever remember in my lifetime. I mean, we're told to wear masks, we were supposed to wear masks everywhere we went in South Carolina. There was, people weren't wearing masks and no one was saying anything to them about it. And we went in places and no one would have masks on there, maybe one person, So, it's like there are all these laws or edicts from public officials that are now being summarily ignored. Okay. So a certain amount of that, and you are a banana republic. That's the difference between us and banana republics is their laws aren't really enforced, right? They don't really bring people to justice. Now you have, it's not just this. It's like the Chaz or Chop or whatever it's called this week in Seattle. You have 2 people dead in there. And it's like, we don't prosecute murders anymore? I mean, we really letting these guys consider themselves to be sovereign to the point where, the people who commit crimes in there are not subject to the criminal penalties that people of Washington state are. It's like we have laws, rules, etc., and they're being disregarded. And in some cases you say, okay, they should be. You're telling us, if you're going to tell us, those other laws are ignored, then don't be surprised when we ignore your mask rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the mask rule is, I mean, even in Maryland, sometimes it gets a little confusing. I mean, my wife and I went to our favorite little Mexican place and pick up our almost every Tuesday meal. And I don't remember seeing any signs saying that we had to wear a mask. We did, there were a handful of people actually sitting at tables and they were wearing masks, and all the workers were wearing masks. But rather than get into any hassle about it, we wore it, obviously, except when we were eating. But I think there's an unevenness going on there. People aren't sure, okay, so if I enter a restaurant where I'm going to be consuming food, how do I have to wear a mask until the food comes? Do I have to wear a mask when I order? It doesn't seem to be real clear cut. I think it seems to be the establishment kind of decides how far they're willing to go with that. As long as they're, as long as the servers or, and, the wait staff and whatever are wearing them, I think that's fine. It just becomes such an inconvenience for a lot of other people. My wife, who's made a lot of masks, she's determined now that she's just making single layer masks for the summer. She's just like, it's just too hot out there, to wear a mask anywhere with this. In the wintertime, go to the dual layer mask that we've got or whatever. So I think, we hadn't thought about that before. We've kind of learned all right, neither one really is great protection either way anyway, the cloth, but we'll follow the edicts as much as we have to, but we modify based on comfort level and other things and stuff like that. At least I think the masks are probably better than the scarves, I guess.
Right.
So,
and it's, you're trying to be reasonable too. I mean,
yeah.
most people are, if there's reasonable danger, we'll take reasonable precautions.
Right. And I don't want to get to the point of, there was I think a taco place in California, and there was another one in Alabama, I think. And the taco place in California, I think they had 2 outlets, and they basically closed down with this and posted a notice that they tried to open the dining room, but the patrons, the customers, were unruly. They were badgering the wait staff and stuff like that. It's like, look, if you want to eat in, follow the rules within reason. I mean, and it's like, look, if they ask you to wear a mask until until the food comes or whatever, do it or whatever, or modify. I don't think that the restaurant was trying to be, unreasonable, but the patrons apparently were just hassling the staff. And I think that's not what you want in this case at all.
Right.
It's like, we're living under these conditions. Don't make it any worse than it already is.
Right. But the thing about that is like, you have a law that, there's no police there to enforce it. The restaurant, the private business has to enforce the law, on its customers. So that's how you get disrespect for the law. That's how you get breakdown of society.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, so
we don't consider legitimate enough to follow. When that gets to be, a big stack of laws, you have a problem.
Yeah, and we have, there are definitely people who probably, if they had their druthers, they would just have us wear masks really till the end of time. And I don't think I'm willing to do certain things, but I don't want to live the rest of my life having to wear a mask all the time.
Right. And I think there are people that, what they have in mind, the other thing is like, a lot of these politicians, they've gotten to like the idea that they can order the whole economy to shut down. That's more power than, Andrew Cuomo thought he was getting when he was elected governor of New York. Right.
Right.
Just control the entire economy. Right. He didn't know he was going to get that. Now he has it, and he kind of likes playing with it, and he's not the only one. So
right.
I mean, that's another thing.
Right. All right. So you briefly mentioned the disorder in the chop zone. So I'll just bring that up now before we go on to some other things. So this has been going on for weeks. They started with Chaz, they switched to CHOP. The mayor has let this thing go on. She had intimated at least a week or so ago that she wanted to have this removed. Particularly after the first shooting occurred. Now this week we had another shooting and another death. And so now she's sending in, they're dismantling it. Though I did read that, when these front end loaders or whatever, they remove the barriers, the CHOP people are erecting their own barriers with like couches and stuff like that. They're trying to fight against this, but the mayor has got to, she's got to get rid of this. I mean, it's like, how much, she's this law and disorder that's going on here. I mean, 2 shootings, 2 deaths, a couple of hospitalizations on top of that, some other things going on here. It's like, I don't understand how the people of Seattle, how the police chief and everybody else has gone along with this as long as they have. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Right. And okay, so I guess this morning, Seattle police moved in there and they really knocked everything down, and they're retaking the space. But what caused that to happen? It wasn't all the property damage done to that neighborhood. It wasn't the total lack of law and order and filth in the streets of that neighborhood. It wasn't 2 people getting murdered, numerous people getting raped, tons of stuff getting stolen, businesses looted and extorted for money, for protection money, and so forth. It was because the protesters went to the mayor's house. And all of a sudden she's like, wow, my children were scared. It's like, well, those people in Capitol Hill, Seattle, they've been scared for weeks, and you didn't do anything to help them. So now all of a sudden, it's a big crisis. We have to stop. Okay, good. It is a crisis. You have to stop. And good on you to finally realize that and stop it. But, she's about to get sued. That city's about to get sued into oblivion, right? They're going to spend their budget many times over on settlements for the property but the people and property they allowed to be destroyed in the name of, summer of love and all this other garbage this lady came up with. Hey, if you can't see the failure of the philosophies of Democrat governance out of this, then you cannot learn it. You can't figure it out. You can't figure it out from this. You can't figure it out. Because, everything they do has failed. Everything therefore has blown up.
Yeah. So actually you bring up, that's an interesting point here, because, with these deaths in particular, who is responsible for it? Is it the mayor and the city that becomes ultimately responsible for those deaths? If the families want to sue, they sue the city, right?
The city's policy caused it to happen. It'll take a trial lawyer to win a case, but once the first case is won and the city's liability for damage done within the CHOP is established, everyone else who lost people, property, whatever, can sue the city. And they'll win. They'll have to just settle out of court or whatever.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'd actually be really curious to see that actually take place, because these liberal politicians have got to learn a lesson here, that they just cannot let the lefties just take over a city.
Your job is to protect property. It's not even to protect people. People, as we found out in St. Louis yesterday, the day before, people's job is to take care of them, protect themselves. Okay. But, the city is supposed to protect your property. The government, that's why we pay government, is protect our property.
Right. All right. So once again, continuing down the path, you now mentioned St. Louis. So that'll another item off the list that we'll talk about briefly. So we had this couple that has really been, pilloried, vilified, whatever, pounded on by the media for, coming out of their house the other day when Black Lives Matter protesters came down their private street on the way to the mayor's house in St. Louis, and they were brandishing a couple of...
So one of the things the guy said is, you can't get to the mayor's house from here. So the notion that, these guys were passing through on the way to the mayor's house is not true. The guy with the gun said that on TV.
So they were in the wrong place anyway.
They weren't necessarily looking for the mayor.
Yeah.
Just bust into rich community, cause mayhem. Well, this guy's like, you're not causing mayhem at my house, right? Yeah. That's why I bought the gun, right? And I loved he had the wife out there, and the wife's wagging that gun around, And I saw people, commenting on Facebook, somebody needs to teach that woman how to use a firearm. No, they don't. I liked that, it looked real unpredictable and dangerous, right? Because if I'm a protester and she's wagging that gun around, it's that could go off at any time. I need to go home, right? Yeah. Whereas if she's got her good stance, it's okay, she's been taught restraint, right? She's been taught to hold on. It's she hasn't been taught anything. All she knows is if I shoot this gun at someone, they might die, right? That's all she knows. So, I didn't blame him at all for that. But look, that I guess Missouri's a castle doctrine state, which means if you cross his threshold, he can kill you, right? By law, So, they can try their luck with this guy, but I don't blame him. The police are not going to protect you. They didn't protect St. Louis. They didn't protect Ferguson, right? The law enforcement in eastern Missouri has not really stood up to this challenge. So, I don't blame people for not trusting them and for taking the defense of their selves and their home into their own hands.
Yeah. I think that's what has to be understood here, is just that, it's a gated community. They came in through this. This is something that these people, this is not part of their normal daily life, is to have protesters or whatever coming down your street, peaceful or otherwise, whatever however the media wants to portray them. I think they have every right to defend their property, and and then we can get into whether or not what would have happened, but we don't have to, because they didn't fire their weapons. But as you said, the thing is that they're in St. Louis. St. Louis has already had problems with just kind of corralling, trying to keep the violence at bay.
This guy Dorn was shot.
Yeah. So in that sense, if you're living in the general vicinity, you're like, look, I've seen a lot of mayhem, on television. I've been driving down a neighborhood or whatever. I'm not taking any chances. I'm not going to, just hole up in my home here because I'm not sure exactly what's going on here. I want to defend this home, which is, I think I saw one story said was worth maybe $1.7 million, and they had just done a lot of extensive renovations on it. So they were protecting their property, and there. I also had read, and I don't know if this guy had said anything in the interview or not, but I mean, I believe that, according to another story was that they had shut down their website and boarded up their legal practice, at least temporarily, because of, they're afraid of the backlash and things that happen. So, this is part of the other problem too, is that you go out and you defend yourself, within your rights, but the other side comes down on you and they will go after you. They'll go after your business and other things. So, they race to protect those types of things, and they'll be economically damaged for a certain period of time until this blows over. So, they had no intention of doing anything that was illegal. They were just trying to protect themselves and, their property.
Right. And if you're, if you're at home and you don't want to participate in a protest, you shouldn't have to participate in a protest.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I want to be home. You guys do what you want to do out there. But, I'm not a part of that. You should be allowed to not be a part of it. And that's what was lost here, is that wasn't allowed.
Right. All right. I want to go back to something earlier here, which is I just want to deal with a little bit of international stuff. We haven't talked a whole lot about things going on internationally, but we've got a few things. I mean, one, I guess, is this whole thing about Trump and this whole bounty situation on troops and Russia and all this kind of stuff like this. And this became a big brouhaha or, thing with the Democrats. They got briefed at the White House, and they were shocked that, Trump hadn't been briefed on this. And Trump's called this, a lot of fake news. Kayleigh McEnany's called out the news media about all of this kind of stuff. I mean, what's the deal on this whole bounty issue? Is there something there, or is there nothing, or is it somewhere in between, or where are we with this?
Well, the best I can gather on this is that, Trump is not told about every gum wrapper that falls to the street in Muskogee, Oklahoma either, right? Because, someone else takes care of gun wrappers that fall to the street in Muskogee, Alabama, or Oklahoma, okay? The Russians routinely hire mercenaries. The ads are public. All that is known about this is known from public open source reporting. There's no anybody got behind the scenes, right? So ads are posted, people sign the contracts. The Russians put in their contracts that, we're not going to pay you unless you, in fact, kill some people. We're paying you to be a mercenary. We're not paying you to, sit in the desert and drink on our money all day. You got to go out and do some mercenary stuff. So, the idea that they were paid, right? That's common in how these things are handled. Okay, so I think it did not rise to the level where it didn't involve enough people to where people thought that Trump needed to be taking action on it. If we're gonna, we have a long list of grievances with Russia. If we're gonna, pick from that list and go nuke Russia, I don't know that this, 6 people dealing with mercenaries is the cause.
Yeah.
It doesn't appear he knows, and it doesn't, I guess even Lindsey Graham put out a series of tweets where he said, if this is going on, we obviously need to stop it. But, if anybody says Donald Trump is soft on force protection, they're just wrong, because he's, reoriented the military to try to better protect the force. I mean, that's been a point of emphasis for him since he's been president.
All right. Number 2 on the international list of sorts is President Macron's party faced their first municipal elections this past week, and they did badly. And Europe is Europe is always interesting to me, because there are always a series of elections on different levels and these parties, they run these people right through all these things, and it kind of gives you a glimpse of what happens when the presidential election comes up eventually and all these other things come up. And so I think his candidate finished like really like a distant third for this, well, I think it was a mayoral race or something like that. I don't know what this portends for Macron, but European politics are very different. And I don't know whether or not, is this the beginning of something that we could see that will have a domino effect as other, elections come up in France, or is this going to be just that one-off thing and it won't really matter? I mean, I know that neither one of us are necessarily experts on this, but I'm kind of curious.
Well, one thing, when Macron was elected, his party did not have any seats in parliament. They had 0 seats. So it's kind of been created out of whole cloth. So the idea that, someone in there was not strong enough to hold the mayoral seat is not immediately shocking. The other thing is, through all Trump has been through in the United States, he's still polling in the mid-40s. He's at 44 today on Rasmussen. He's gone up. He actually got to 42 on Monday, which is the lowest of his presidency, but it was 43 yesterday, 44 today. So it appears to be other thing about the Rasmussen. I will just throw this in there. The low rating tends to come on Monday. The high rating tends to come on Thursday or Friday. I don't know why that is, but if you watch the series of the polls, that's when Trump's numbers get better as he goes through the week, almost every week. But Macron has been in the 15 to 22 range for more than a year. He is extremely unpopular himself, and given that he doesn't really have a party underneath him, he's in serious trouble.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I meant to mention about this too is that the strength in this local municipal election was with the socialists and the Greens. So, yeah. I mean, and that could be, I mean, there's always been a lot of fighting going on there. I mean, in France, I mean, it could be that they will wind up eventually, you're mentioning Macron's poor, ratings right now, is that, they could wind up with a socialist premier, going for president.
Yeah, I mean, they've had it before.
Right.
And I guess Le Pen is going to be a strong candidate next time. She may not have enough to win, but, there's a block of French voters who are on that plane, and it depends on how big she can grow it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time believing that the French would actually elect Le Pen, but she is strong enough to create havoc within the French electoral system. I mean, she is a force to be reckoned with, one way or the other.
And they get those, they get 4 or 5 or 6 candidates in these things, right? So you don't have to get 50 plus 1.
Right. I mean, she could sneak in as the others kind of divide everything up. So You never know. But majority for Le Pen, no. But but just getting in there by the plurality, I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, and form a governing coalition, people who actually want to run and stuff. So
it is possible. All right. So I also wanted to ask you about, we've Hong Kong, China put into their legislation, this whole thing, kind of restricting what can be done in Hong Kong, and they've actually it's in place now, and they made their first arrests. I don't know. I mean, what does this do to the kind of that, the free Hong Kong movement? I mean, are they going to be able to continue in any way, shape, or form? Is this going to effectively quash dissent in Hong Kong?
You're not going to quash dissent in Hong Kong. The Chinese would be better off to go back 10 years to where they were then with this. They promised to, when the British turned it over to them, to basically lay off and let Hong Kong be Hong Kong. The longer it's gone on, dictator's going to dictator, right? So they can't stand to watch this freedom in their midst, and it just bugs them, and they get to the point where they have to try to do something about it. But the magic of Hong Kong is that there are not government restraints. There is rule of law. Contracts are honored. Business is done in a way that Americans would recognize. Promises are kept or enforced, right? If you don't have that, if you're dealing with the CCP and all the corruption that they bring to the process, then Hong Kong's just another province of China. And, we're not going to do a lot more business with China for a long time now, unless, I guess, Biden's elected, which is less and less likely by the day. Um, because Trump is wanting to decouple from him, and I think there's a lot of momentum behind that in the United States about just getting apart from them and then negotiating piecemeal back into the relationship, so to speak, as they demonstrate they can be trusted, right? But Hong Kong, you're killing the golden goose, and yet they have no idea the forces they're unleashing, right? Because in Hong Kong, on those like the Index of Economic Freedom that the Heritage Foundation does, and there's 3 or 4 of those indexes that are all getting at the same points, measuring similarly. And Hong Kong and Singapore are always 1, 2 in some order on those lists, right? As the freest economies in the world. So that's how Hong Kong pays its freight, as it is a trade center. And if you mess with that, if you're going to put that under the rubric that the CCP operates under, you're going to kill that golden goose. And, whatever tax revenues flow from it and so forth, you will not be getting, and all those people out of work and a lot more unrest. I mean, the move in China is to, look the other way, is to avert your eyes and let Hong Kong be Hong Kong.
Yeah, no, I agree with that in general. I mean, I wonder, and I don't know, I have no idea if this is even possible. I mean, as China, tightens the grip on Hong Kong, whether or not is it a possibility that businesses will try to flee Hong Kong and find other countries and set up?
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Singapore could stand. There's a few people out there like Djibouti, I believe is one of them, where Djibouti. The guy is trying to make it into a free market economy, and those people, they're like simple trade functions. It's sort of like sort of similar to the Delaware corporations here in the United States. It's like people do business through Delaware corporations because that's the easiest, soundest way to do it. Okay, if you can get to be known as an easy, sound, safe place to do business, that's worth billions and billions of dollars, jobs, prosperity for your country, right? So someone's going to come along and say, wow, we can grab a lot of market share in a hurry by becoming the new Hong Kong. There's no partial in this. So very soon after the Chinese start, exercising their control over it, the golden goose is going to go away.
Yeah, that'll be too bad. It's been a big economic engine
sure has
for the world. All right, so now shifting back domestically, you are a pretty staunch supporter, at least been a good defender of the president. So the question here is that the other day, he likes to tweet and retweet stuff, and I do believe that he retweets a lot of things without realizing what's inside the tweet, and so he got caught a little bit here by tweeting. I guess it was a supporter video, and inside the video was the guy had some kind of like white power chant or something or other. He deleted the video, but obviously the media just jumped on him, big time for this. Does President Trump need to take a little more care in that? Does somebody need to watch over him a little bit more? Is this just part and parcel of this is Trump being Trump?
Well, so the video is at the Villages, which is a huge, like 50 or 60,000 people retirement community in Florida, and Trump is very popular there. So they're having a parade of golf carts, as happens on those places. And the Trump supporters are going through there, and the Democrats along their side are just yelling vile, cussing at them, trying to throw stuff at them. Just, but it's one of those things like, the tone of the Democrats and all these debates, protests, whatever, is almost uniformly hostile, vile, uncompromising, nasty, right? So, one of them, just to goad the person, haranguing them, just started saying white power, white. It's toward the end of the video and you don't hear it much. And so probably Trump saw that like his protesters were battling with, naysayers on the side and thought that was good. And, then he so he tweets it out and he goes to play golf. And so other people notice this white power, and, his staff is saying, hey, we need to take this down. Can somebody talk to him? They try to track him down on the golf course. So, then it was taken down. And then it was realized, the other thing is, like, when he realizes there's a mistake on something like that, they just take it down, right? He does not, you think about, like, I keep going back to this. When they found the Billy Bush tape, right? Grab her by the whatever, right? They play that tape. So what did Trump do? Did he lie about that? Did he prevaricate? Did he, try to explain it away in any way? No, he said, that's me. I'm responsible. I was wrong. So the idea that he won't take responsibility for your actions, that is media creation and untrue. So, they didn't, I don't know that they, bowed at the altar and killed themselves with apologies on this, but they did take it down as soon as he realized what the problem was.
Okay, so now next up we have the Supreme Court, which is, decisions have been coming down. We just had a decision the other day where they struck down the Louisiana abortion clinic law that had been in effect, and
that clinic actually was about 1.5 miles, 2 miles from where I grew up, my house where I grew up.
So the interesting thing is that, Justice Roberts voted with the majority to strike it down. Apparently there was a similar law in Texas, right, and he had actually voted to uphold that in 2016. So, but conservatives are very unhappy with our Chief Justice overall, and President Trump has used this as an opportunity to talk about, I guess, to help with his reelection campaign, that we need more conservative justices on the Supreme Court and things like that. But I mean, when you look at these recent decisions, and this one as well, I mean, what's been going on here? Has Chief Justice Roberts, is he trying to take up the Anthony Kennedy role? Does he not want to look overly one side or the other, and then so he's now voting with a liberal a lot? I mean, what's going on here in the Supreme Court? What about this decision?
Well, he said all along that he had a lot of respect for stare decisis, or previous decisions, precedent. Okay, so his position on this was that the facts presented in the Texas case did not differ materially from the facts presented in the Louisiana case. These are what's being contested here is laws that say doctors who perform abortions must have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. So if a abortion goes bad, the doctor can immediately go get the patient into the hospital. Now I'm as anti-abortion as anybody, but I can't imagine that someone is messed up in an abortion and presents themselves at a hospital saying, I need help, and the hospital, well, your doctor doesn't have admitting privileges, so we're going to let you die, right? That's not how hospitals work. So this is it's really hurt some of these abortion things. Like in Alabama, the guy flies in from somewhere, I don't even think it's in the US, 2 days a week and performs abortions. So he obviously doesn't have any relationship with any local hospitals. So they were able to shut down abortion clinics with this one law. And so what the Supreme Court precedent requires is that you be able to demonstrate that the law does indeed make it safer. And it's not just to limit access and make it where people can't get abortions, because abortion is, sadly legal through Roe v. Wade. So what they thought is, since, the Texas case, we've added, the Kavanaugh vote to it. And if John Roberts would just vote the same convictions he had in that case, it would be overturned. And instead he voted to protect precedent because he said no new facts are presented. So, they were, and then he turned around the next day and upheld the Trump administration on asylum and 2 or 3 cases that were border issues that he, did rule for the administration. So, no one came out and said, oh, he's not so bad. They stayed on, we hate Roberts. And, he's a Bushy. He's not, he's not really a strong conservative. So what Trump is saying is, if I get reelected, and, and it's probably true, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is not going to try to make it through 5 more years, and he'll get another seat. He'll get to appoint another seat.
Well, and I think, with Ginsburg, I mean, I think it's clear that if Biden gets elected, I think she will resign, and allowing Biden to get a chance to put someone up there. Because, the Senate, it may or may not be held by the Republicans, after November and everything like this. It's really hard to tell where these elections are going, because we don't really have real campaigns going on with all of this.
Right.
But
and there's a feeling that, like, given the protests and, the like violence that has come to people who've spoken their mind about politics in the United States in the last 6 months, that there are a lot of people who are ready to, vote Republican, that are not telling pollsters and are not putting signs out, and, because they're concerned about the unrest in the country.
Yeah, and one more thing on the Supreme Court too is that they did have this decision about funding for private schools, right, religious schools.
Right.
So that was a good that was a good decision.
Conservatives on that.
Yeah, that's a good decision. But you're exactly correct. When it comes to when it's the decisions whether or not you can deport these people and you can do these things, we're not really hearing much praise there. But it is on the DACA case, on the abortion case, these types of things, the LGBTQ thing. Those things. He's getting vilified for that. But justices. I don't know that you couldn't, I think you definitely have the liberal bloc and the conservative bloc, but as you say, he is a Bush appointee. So this is where it becomes, to me, he becomes much more of the wild card in this sense now. But it's not clear which way he'll go every single time. And, he enraged conservatives over Obamacare. So they've had it out for him for years anyway. Right.
Right. And it's like, right. That's right. And that was sort of like the one the other day, and that he seemed to like come up with an excuse to justify siding against the conservatives. Noel Canning, especially. That was a horrible miscarriage of justice.
Now, you mentioned this briefly at the beginning, but it's time to just have a real brief talk about this. So Joe Biden held a press conference, a real press conference, not something out of his just basement with one reporter or something like that. First one of these in 89 days, about half an hour long. I think it was like 15 questions. But you were saying something earlier that there was at least one question he didn't like very much.
There was one question he got asked, and he called the reporter a dog face, but the rest was complete softball. Just do you love America? Stuff like that, basically.
Should Trump wear a mask?
Told of all the people there who to call on, right? So I have a question for Matt AP. Didn't even realize that it means Matt from the AP.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not really being sound of mind.
Well, okay, right. So what about the question? I mean, the issue that arises about should he be tested for his mental acuity, and he's saying I'm tested every day, right?
Yeah, but he's not. But I mean, he's getting softball questions, and he did not handle them. He couldn't think of the answers a couple of times. He had some bad stumbles in that thing. If I'm Democrats, I'm watching that. I'm like, wow, we are in trouble.
Yeah,
you can't sit there and hide this guy all the way till November. At some point, he's got to debate Trump. He's chickening out of that. You're starting to see the leftist press. Karen Tumulty had a piece in the Post last week saying, do we really need presidential debates? Is that still relevant? Yeah, it's relevant, Karen, because you're about to lose one. You're going to lose badly. And I think that. And I think that's why you started reflecting on the importance of presidential debate. Right? Just me, I'm kind of suspicious, but I think that's what's going on there. All
right. It's time for 2 minutes to wrap up.
UMSCA takes effect today. United States, Mexico, Canada free trade agreement replaced NAFTA, puts us on a lot more fair footing in these things. We'll be able to sell dairy products in Canada, which we weren't able to do before. Had like a 257% tariff. It's kind of hard to compete with that. A lot more, the like maquiladoras are treated more fairly, so we get we're not paying, losing to people paying slave wages just across the border in Mexico. Trump fulfills a campaign promise. Also, new laws in the states today. In Virginia, marijuana is now a $25 civil fine, like a parking ticket. It's not even like a assessed straight to you criminal ticket at all. It's completely like an administrative fine.
Yeah, interesting.
Which I think, I guess that sounds, however you are on the pot issue, that seems to me like the worst place to be, because we're basically saying we're not going to enforce it. If we do enforcement, we're not going to do much about it, but you're not, if you just legalize it, then you can sell it and tax it and it can become an industry, whichever one you want. If you don't want pot, then you don't want it, you need more than a $25 fine, and it also doesn't stop police from harassing people and handcuffing them and searching their belongings for pot, because pot's still against the law, right? Yeah. If you want to do all these things that, the pro-pot people say to do, then make it legal, right? If you don't want to make it legal, then you got to fine it more than $25, right? So again, it's like Democrats destroying respect for rule of law.
Yeah, but I just want to close with so Amy McGrath apparently was declared the winner in the Kentucky Senate Democrat race, so she'll face off against Mitch McConnell. But her margin of victory was very thin, it was a tight race. So we have that. Congratulations to Lauren Boebert, I guess that's how you pronounce her name. She knocked off a 5-term incumbent Scott Tipton up in Colorado in the Colorado primary. That was kind of a surprise. She made her claim to fame by going up against Beto on the gun issue, and so President Trump has congratulated her for that. And
even though he endorsed Tipton, right?
Right. Yeah. Look, I mean, he at least with Trump, you got to say, it's like, even if when his candidates lose, like in North Carolina, he still congratulated the winner, right? So give him credit. He didn't fuss about that. We need these Republicans in Congress, so he understands that fact of the matter. And then I thought it was interesting is the final results are not in, but the lieutenant governor in Utah is beating the former governor, John Huntsman in this governor race. I don't follow Utah politics necessarily all that closely, but I thought it was interesting where Huntsman, who was actually a very popular governor, may not make it into the race at all for this. And then finally, I guess, congratulations to Burgess Owens, former NFL player, who will be running for Congress. He's what looks like he's won that primary very handily. Very, very strong Black conservative Christian guy out there, and a much better candidate than Mia Love ever was.
Right.
So anyway, all right. Well, everyone, thank you for staying with us today, joining us. Please stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise. God bless America. Have a great 4th of July. I even wore a white shirt so I could wear the flag tie today. So it would contrast with my blue shirts and everything like that. But have a great 4th of July. It's going to be a very different 4th of July across the country, right? A lot of fireworks canceled or just being done in other fashions. So, but celebrate it any way you can. We live in a fabulous country, and let's celebrate our birthday.
There you go. Happy birthday, America.
Happy birthday, America. All right, that's it. We will see you again next week. Keep doing this. Keep hitting the wrong button. All right. How do I see? I keep meaning to do the end of Facebook Live, and then what I wind up doing is I go to the meet. Oh, there we go. Okay, haha. Now I figure it out.
Looks like Ed Henry has been fired.
Yeah, it was a sexual harassment thing. Somebody had filed a